Kelth spent 3 more weeks on Earth, refusing to leave until he understood what had happened. His team spread across the planet, searching through libraries, data centers, and research facilities. Every discovery made the mystery deeper. In Geneva, they found the headquarters of what humans called the United Nations. Dr. Venn discovered a sealed vault 3 levels below ground. Inside were thousands of hard drives containing diplomatic communications between human nations. Venn spent days reading through the files, watching humanity's governments slowly realize they were not alone in the universe. Ambassador, these records show that humanity detected our scout probes 15 years before we planned to make contact, Venn reported, his voice filled with concern. They tracked our ships at the edge of their solar system. They broke our basic encryption and read our survey reports. Kelth felt his heart sink. What did our reports say? Venn pulled up a document on his portable display. The reports were technical assessments. They noted humanity's rapid advancement, but also expressed concerns about their violent history, their divided nations, and their lack of unified government. The conclusion recommended a supervised integration approach. That's standard procedure for emerging species, Kelth said defensively. We helped them avoid the disasters that destroyed so many other civilizations. I know that, Ambassador. But humans didn't see it that way. Look at this. Venn showed him a human military document marked with their highest security classification. It was an analysis of the Council's intentions, written by someone named Lisa Chen, who had held the rank of captain in something called the United States Space Force. Captain Chen's analysis was blunt and direct. She wrote that the Council's approach appeared designed to limit human expansion and control their development. She noted that no species in Council records had ever been allowed to grow beyond a certain point. They all became junior partners, client states, or protected worlds. None ever achieved true independence or equal status with the founding members. She's wrong, Kelth protested. The Council treats all species fairly. Is she? Venn asked quietly. Ambassador, when was the last time a new species joined the Council as a full member with equal voting rights? Kelth opened his mouth to answer, then stopped. He couldn't remember. The Council's founding members had held power for thousands of years. Other species had been welcomed, protected, and guided, but had any truly become equals? The question troubled him as they continued their investigation. In Houston, at a facility humans had called the Johnson Space Center, another team found the personal files of an engineer named Greg Palmer. Palmer had worked on something called the Waypoint Project for 12 years. His files were heavily encrypted, but human security was primitive compared to Council technology. Dr. Venn broke through the protection in hours. What they found inside made the entire science team fall silent. These aren't starship designs, Venn said, his voice barely above a whisper. These are dimensional gates. Palmer and his team weren't building faster-than-light engines. They were building machines to punch holes in reality itself. Kelth studied the 3-dimensional blueprints that floated above Venn's display. The devices were enormous, the size of small moons. Each one contained power systems that would drain a star to operate. The design was elegant and terrifying in its implications. Can we build one? Kelth asked. Maybe, given a few years and unlimited resources. But Ambassador, do you understand what these are? These aren't wormholes. Those still operate within normal space. These waypoints open doorways to other universes, parallel dimensions where the laws of physics might be completely different. A researcher named Pella rushed into the room, her face flushed with excitement. Ambassador Kelth, we found something. In Washington, in the building they called the White House, there's a message, a recording left specifically for whoever found Earth empty. The team transported immediately to Washington. Inside the famous oval-shaped office where human presidents had once worked, they found a small holographic projector sitting on the desk. A note beside it, written in simple English with translations in 12 other human languages, read, "To the Galactic Council. Please play this message." Kelth activated the projector. A woman appeared, middle-aged with dark skin and gray hair. She wore a formal suit and stood with her shoulders back, every inch a leader. "My name is Helen Brooks," the woman said. "I am the 48th President of the United States and the last President of Earth. If you're watching this, then you've discovered that humanity is gone. I want to explain why." Helen Brooks paced slowly as she spoke, her hands clasped behind her back. 20 years ago, we detected your probes. We were excited at first. The idea that we weren't alone in the universe filled us with hope. We imagined meeting other civilizations, sharing knowledge, exploring the galaxy together. She paused and her expression hardened. Then we intercepted your communications. We learned about the Galactic Council. We learned about your plans for humanity. And we realized that you were coming not as friends but as guardians, as parents coming to supervise dangerous children. The recording showed Brooke sitting down at her desk. Perhaps you mean well. Perhaps every species you've guided has benefited from your help. But humanity has a saying: the road to hell is paved with good intentions. We've seen what happens when powerful civilizations decide to help weaker ones for their own good. We've done it ourselves throughout our history. It never ends well. Kelth wanted to argue with the recording to explain that the council was different, but he remained silent, listening. We spent 15 years debating what to do, Brooks continued. Some wanted to welcome you anyway. Others wanted to hide and hope you'd pass us by. But a scientist named Sophie Martinez proposed a third option. She suggested we leave entirely. Not just Earth, but this entire universe. The president smiled, and it was the smile of someone who had won an impossible victory. Dr. Martinez discovered that our universe is just one of infinite realities. Other dimensions exist alongside ours, separated by barriers thinner than atoms. She found a way to cross those barriers. She found a way to give humanity access to an entire multiverse. Brooke stood again, walking to the window of her office. We spent 5 years building the Waypoint Network, massive stations that could open stable gates to other dimensions. We tested them carefully, sending probes to thousands of different realities. We found universes where humanity could thrive, empty galaxies waiting to be explored, worlds rich with resources and free from competition. She turned back to face the camera, so we made a choice. All of us, every nation, every person. We held a global vote that took 6 months. The question was simple. Should we stay and join the Galactic Council, or should we leave and find our own way? The president's expression was solemn. 87% voted to leave. We spent the next 2 years evacuating Earth. We built transport ships by the thousands. We organized the largest migration in human history. Every person who wanted to leave was given that chance. We left behind only empty cities and this message. Brooks walked back to her desk and sat down one final time. We mean no disrespect to the Galactic Council. I'm sure you've done good work, but humanity has always chosen freedom over safety. We've always preferred to make our own mistakes rather than live under someone else's rules, no matter how wise those rules might be. The president leaned forward, her eyes intense. Out there, somewhere in the infinite dimensions, humanity is building a new civilization. We're exploring galaxies you've never seen. We're learning from mistakes you can't prevent us from making. We're growing in ways you can't predict or control. And yes, maybe we'll fail. Maybe we'll destroy ourselves. Maybe this whole thing is a terrible mistake. She smiled again, warmer this time. But it will be our mistake. Our choice. Our future. That's all we've ever wanted. The freedom to rise or fall by our own hands. The recording began to end, but Brooks held up a hand. One more thing. We don't hate you. We don't fear you. In fact, we hope to meet you again someday. But next time we want to meet as equals. Not as students and teachers. Not as children and parents. Just as two civilizations who respect each other's sovereignty. Helen Brooks stood and gave a formal salute. Good luck, Galactic Council. May you find wisdom in our absence, and may we find wisdom in our freedom. The hologram faded, leaving Kelth and his team standing in silence in the empty office. Outside the window, Washington, D.C. stretched away toward the horizon, a monument to a species that had chosen the unknown over the certain. Kella spoke first, her voice thoughtful. She was right about one thing. We did come here as parents, not friends. We never even considered that humanity might not want our help. Ven nodded slowly. And now they're somewhere we can't follow, unless we can figure out how to activate these waypoint stations. Kelth walked to the window, looking out at the empty city. A strange emotion was growing in his chest. Not anger or disappointment. Something else. Something that might have been respect. Then that's what we'll do, he said firmly. Humanity left us breadcrumbs. These waypoint stations still exist throughout their solar system. If they can cross dimensional barriers, then so can we. I want to understand where they went and why they were so desperate to avoid us. The journey to Jupiter took the Council fleet 2 weeks. During that time, Dr. Ven worked constantly, studying every piece of information they had found about the Waypoint project. He barely slept, surviving on stimulants and determination. Kelth watched his lead scientist grow more exhausted each day, but he also saw the excitement in Ven's eyes. The doctor was looking at technology that shouldn't exist, solving puzzles that had never been asked before. The more I study Sophie Martinez's work, the more amazed I become, Ven said one evening, showing Kelth his latest findings. She wasn't just smart. She was brilliant in ways I can barely understand. Look at this equation here. She's using quantum mechanics, but she's applying it to the structure of reality itself. Kelth studied the complex mathematics on the screen, understanding perhaps one symbol in 20. Can you make the waypoint station work? I think so. The humans left their stations active just in a standby mode. All we need to do is provide power and input coordinates. Ven hesitated. The problem is we don't know where any of the coordinates lead. We'll be stepping through a door without knowing what's on the other side. Humanity did the same thing, Kelth reminded him, with billions of people. Yes, but they had years to test their system. They sent probes through first. We'll be going in blind. Kelth put a hand on the doctor's shoulder. Then we'll be careful. We'll send drones first, just like they did. We'll take this slowly and safely. The waypoint station orbiting Jupiter was enormous, much larger than it had appeared in the blueprints. It was built in sections, each one the size of a city, all connected by massive support structures. The center held a ring 3 kilometers across, empty space that hummed with residual energy even in its dormant state. It's beautiful, Kella whispered from her station. Humanity built this. A species that had barely reached their own moon 30 years before we arrived. And they built this. Plek was scanning the station systems. I'm detecting a control center in the northern section. The power systems are still active, drawing energy from solar collectors. This thing could activate right now if we give it the command. The landing party boarded the station carefully, moving through corridors designed for human proportions. Everything was labeled in English with helpful diagrams. It seemed humanity had anticipated someone might try to follow them and had made it as easy as possible. In the control center, they found a room full of computers and displays. One screen lit up as they entered, displaying a message in English that Kelth's translator converted immediately. Welcome to Waypoint Station 7. If you're reading this, you've probably figured out that we're gone. This message is for anyone brave enough or curious enough to follow. Below you'll find basic instructions for operating the station. We've left it active specifically so others can use it if they choose. But please understand, once you cross the threshold, you're in dimensions where the Galactic Council has no authority, where your technology might not work, where the laws of physics you depend on might not apply. Travel carefully. The message was signed by Greg Palmer, the engineer whose files they had found in Houston. Dr. Ven sat down at the main console, his hands moving carefully over the controls. It's remarkably intuitive. Palmer designed this interface to be used by people who had never seen dimensional technology before. Look, here's a list of coordinates. Thousands of them. Each one represents a different universe humanity tested. Can you tell which ones they're using? Kelth asked. Ven pulled up more data. Some of these coordinates are marked with green indicators. Others are yellow or red. I think green means safe for human habitation. Yellow means tested but dangerous. Red means hostile or impossible to survive. Kella pointed at the screen. There are hundreds of green markers. Humanity didn't just find one safe universe. They found hundreds of them. The implications were staggering. Kelth had assumed humanity had fled to a single location, a hidden world where they could rebuild. Instead, they had scattered across multiple realities, spreading their entire species across dimensions like seeds in the wind. Start with this one, Kelth said, pointing at a green-marked coordinate near the top of the list. Send a probe through first. Let's see what humanity found. Ven programmed the coordinates into the system. Power began flowing into the massive ring at the station's center. Energy crackled across the empty space, forming patterns of light that hurt to look at directly. Reality itself seemed to twist and fold, and then suddenly the ring filled with something that wasn't quite light or matter. It was a window into somewhere else. Through the opening they could see stars, but they weren't the familiar stars of the Milky Way. These stars were different colors, arranged in unfamiliar patterns. Probe launching, Plek announced. A small drone flew through the portal and disappeared. For a moment there was silence. Then data began streaming back. Atmosphere readable, Plek said, his voice excited. Oxygen, nitrogen, similar to Earth. Gravity slightly lower than standard. Temperature comfortable. No radiation hazards detected. It's perfect for human life. The probe's cameras showed them a world that could have been Earth's twin. Blue oceans, green continents, white clouds, but the planet was empty. No cities, no signs of technology. No indication anyone had ever lived there. Did humanity settle here? Kelth asked. Ven checked the station's logs. According to these records, they sent a colony ship through to this universe 6 months ago. 5,000 people. They named this dimension Haven 3. They left the portal open and programmed another set of coordinates. This time, the window showed a universe where the stars burned blue instead of yellow. The probe reported strange readings, physics that operated slightly differently than expected. But it was still survivable. Humanity called this one Frontier 9, Ven reported. Population 15,000. They're building a settlement on the 4th planet from the sun. Over the next 3 days, Kelth's team tested portal after portal. They found dozens of universes where humanity had established colonies. Some were almost identical to their home universe. Others were strange and exotic, with physics that bent the rules in fascinating ways. In one dimension, they found an automated message beacon orbiting a gate station similar to the one at Jupiter. The message was from a woman named Kate Sullivan, who identified herself as the navigation officer for the colony ship Freedom. "We arrived in this universe 2 months ago," Sullivan's recorded message said. "We found 7 planets suitable for human settlement. The galaxy here is empty. No other intelligent species detected. We're naming this dimension New Frontier, and we're starting construction on our first city tomorrow. If anyone from Earth finds this message, know that we're safe and happy here. This universe is beautiful." Kelth listened to the joy in Sullivan's voice and felt a strange mix of emotions, relief that humanity seemed to be thriving, but also a deep sadness that they had felt such a need to escape. "How many universes have they colonized?" he asked Ven. The doctor checked his data. "Based on the marked coordinates, I'd estimate at least 50 different dimensions. Maybe more. And that's just in the 10 months since they left Earth. They could have spread to hundreds by now." Pella made a discovery that changed everything. She found a locked file in the station's computer system, encrypted with sophisticated human security. It took her 2 days to break through, but when she did, she found something remarkable. "Ambassador, this is a complete technical database," she said, her voice shaking with excitement. "Everything humanity learned about dimensional travel. All of Sophie Martinez's equations. All of Greg Palmer's engineering specifications. Complete instructions for building waypoint stations." Why would they leave this behind? Kelth wondered. A text file accompanied the database. The message was from Martinez herself. "To whoever finds this, we've left you our knowledge freely, not because we trust you, but because we believe knowledge should be shared. If you want to follow us, you can. If you want to build your own dimensional gates, you're welcome to try. But understand this, the multiverse is infinite. You'll never find us unless we want to be found. These coordinates will lead you to our old colony sites, but we won't stay in places you can reach. We're always moving forward, always exploring, always looking for the next horizon. Maybe someday we'll meet again, but it will be on our terms when we're ready. Until then, safe travels." Kelth read the message 3 times, and with each reading, he understood humanity a little better. They hadn't run away out of fear. They had left because staying meant accepting limits they refused to acknowledge. Dr. Ven programmed another set of coordinates, one marked with a blue indicator. "Ambassador, this one is labeled differently. It says Meeting Point Alpha. Should we investigate?" Kelth nodded, and Ven activated the portal. This time the window opened onto a truly bizarre universe. The stars were arranged in perfect geometric patterns. Space itself seemed to have structure, like a grid overlaying reality. The probe's readings were strange. "This universe has different physical constants," Ven reported. "Light travels slower here. Time moves at a different rate. But it's stable. The probe is functioning normally, just differently. They sent a ship through, piloted remotely. On the other side, they found a structure floating in space. The silver ships appeared at the edge of Earth's solar system without warning. Ambassador Kelth stood on the bridge of his vessel, watching the blue planet grow larger on the viewing screen. He had traveled for 3 months to reach this distant world, carrying with him the most important message the Galactic Council had ever prepared. Today was supposed to be historic. Today, humanity would learn they were not alone in the universe. Kelth adjusted his ceremonial robes and reviewed the speech he had practiced 1,000 times. The council had debated for years about the right moment to contact Earth. They had watched humanity split atoms, launch satellites, and land on their moon. The humans were ready, the council had finally agreed. It was time to invite them into the greater galactic community, but something was wrong. The communications officer, a young Zentari named Plek, turned from his station with confusion on his face. "Ambassador, I'm detecting no signals from the planet. No radio waves, no television broadcasts, no satellite transmissions?" Kelth frowned. "Check your equipment. Perhaps their technology operates on frequencies we haven't scanned yet." Plek worked at his console for several minutes, then shook his head. "Sir, I've scanned every possible frequency. There's nothing. The planet is completely silent." A cold feeling settled in Kelth's chest. He ordered the fleet to move closer, into orbit around Earth. Through the viewing screens, he could see the continents and oceans clearly. The planet looked beautiful and alive, but as they descended lower, the truth became impossible to ignore. The cities were empty. New York stood exactly as the council's records showed it should look, with its tall buildings reaching toward the sky. But no lights glowed in the windows. No vehicles moved through the streets. The famous bridges that connected the island to the mainland carried no traffic at all. "Take us to other population centers," Kelth ordered, his voice tight. The fleet moved across the planet. London was silent. Tokyo was still. Beijing showed no signs of life. Paris, Moscow, Sydney, Mumbai. Every city, every town, every village, all empty. All quiet, all perfectly preserved, as if the inhabitants had simply walked away one day and never returned. Kelth ordered landing parties to investigate. Teams of scientists and soldiers descended to Earth's surface, walking through streets that should have been full of people. They found cars parked neatly along roads. They found homes with furniture still in place, beds made, dishes in cupboards. They found stores with merchandise still on shelves, but they found no bodies, no signs of struggle, no indication of disease or disaster. The humans had simply vanished. In what their records identified as Washington, D.C., Kelth's team entered a massive white building that sat at the center of the city's government district. Inside, they found offices frozen in time. Papers sat on desks. Computers remained at workstations, their screens dark but their cases free of dust, as if they had been turned off just yesterday. Dr. Venn, the expedition's lead scientist, made the first important discovery. In a military facility beneath a mountain in a place called Colorado, he found a personal computer still running on emergency power. The computer belonged to someone named Jake Morrison, who had been a commander in Earth's naval forces. "Ambassador, you need to see this," Venn called out over the communication link. Kelth transported down to the facility immediately. The underground base was massive, carved deep into the mountain rock. Emergency lights cast everything in a dim red glow. Venn led him to a small office where a computer screen glowed with text. "These are personal logs," Venn explained. "This Jake Morrison kept detailed records for years. The last entry is dated approximately 10 months ago." Kelth leaned forward to read the strange human letters that his translation device converted into his own language. Morrison's final entry was short but revealing. "Tomorrow we leave. Everything is ready. The last waypoint station came online this morning, and the evacuation fleet has been standing by for weeks. President Brooks gave the final authorization an hour ago. By this time tomorrow, Earth will be empty. I hope we're making the right choice. I hope whoever finds this place understands why we had to go." "Waypoint station?" Kelth asked. "What does that mean?" Venn scrolled through earlier entries. He mentions it several times but never explains the details. Whatever it was, it seems to have been humanity's greatest secret, a project they called Threshold. Over the next few days, Kelth's team searched every major facility they could find. They discovered more clues but few answers. In a research laboratory in California, they found the workspace of a scientist named Sophie Martinez. Her notes covered dozens of whiteboards filled with mathematical equations that made even Dr. Venn's eyes widen in shock. "This is impossible," Venn whispered, studying the equations. "She's describing a way to fold space, but not in any way I've ever seen. These formulas suggest she wasn't working on faster-than-light travel. She was working on something else entirely, something that would allow movement outside normal space. Can you understand it?" Kelth asked. Venn shook his head slowly. "Some of it. enough to know that if she succeeded, humanity achieved something the Council has never even attempted. They found a way to leave this universe entirely. Kelth felt his legs grow weak. He sat down heavily in Sophie Martinez's chair, staring at the equations that covered the walls. Leave the universe? That's not possible. I would have said the same thing yesterday, Ven replied. But these equations are sound. Radical, revolutionary, but sound. If humanity built machines based on this mathematics, they could have opened doorways to places we can't follow. In New York, another team found a storage facility full of records, digital archives that contained news reports, government documents, and historical files. A young researcher named Kella spent days sorting through the information, building a timeline of humanity's final decades. She presented her findings to Kelth in the empty United Nations building, where the Council had hoped to hold their first meeting with human leaders. Ambassador, humanity knew we were coming, Kella said, displaying holographic images of human news reports. 20 years ago, they detected our deep space probes. They intercepted some of our communications. They spent 2 decades preparing for this moment, but not in the way we expected. The holographic images showed humans building massive structures in orbit around their planet, construction projects on the Moon and Mars, enormous facilities that humans had disguised as commercial ventures and scientific stations. They were building an escape route, Kella continued. Whatever these waypoint stations were, humanity spent 20 years constructing them throughout their solar system. When they were ready, they left. All of them. Every man, woman, and child. They evacuated an entire species in a matter of weeks. Kelth stood at the window of the United Nations building, looking out at the empty streets of New York. Somewhere out there, beyond the stars, beyond the reach of the Galactic Council, billions of humans were starting a new life in a place he couldn't even imagine. Why didn't they wait for us? He asked quietly. Why didn't they want to join the Council? Kella pulled up one more document. I found this in their government archives. It's a classified Council communication from 5 years ago. Somehow the humans intercepted it. Kelth read the document with growing horror. It was a debate among Council members about how to handle humanity once contact was made. The words jumped out at him. Supervised development, controlled expansion, guided integration. The Council had meant well, planning to help humanity avoid the mistakes younger species often made. But reading it now through human eyes, Kelth understood how it must have sounded, like a prison sentence delivered with a smile. They ran from us, Kelth said softly. We came here to welcome them to the galaxy and they ran away. Yes, Kella agreed. And given their technology, I don't think we can follow them. Kelth turned from the window, his decision made. Then we'll have to try anyway. I need to understand what happened here. I need to know where humanity went and why they were so desperate to avoid us. Prepare the science teams. We're going to find out what these waypoint stations are and where they lead. Outside the window, Earth remained silent and empty, an abandoned cradle waiting for children who would never return home. The Council chamber was packed when Kelth arrived to present his findings. Representatives from 40 species filled the seats, and every one of them looked at him with expressions ranging from curiosity to outright anger. He had defied direct orders, stayed away for 3 months, and returned with claims that would challenge everything the Council believed. The High Arbiter, an ancient being named Vorath, called the session to order with a strike of his ceremonial staff. Ambassador Kelth, you stand accused of insubordination and reckless endangerment of your crew. Before we discuss your punishment, we will hear your report on the human situation. Make it brief. Kelth stepped forward, carrying a data crystal containing everything his team had recorded. Honored Council, I cannot make this brief. What I've discovered requires your full attention and careful consideration. Vorath's eyes narrowed. Very well, proceed. For the next 6 hours, Kelth presented his findings. He showed them recordings of empty Earth, of abandoned cities and silent streets. He displayed the messages left by Helen Brooks and Jake Morrison. He shared Sophie Martinez's equations and Greg Palmer's engineering designs. He showed them the colonies, the dimensional gates, the vast network of human civilization spreading across the multiverse. The Council chamber grew quieter as he spoke. Representatives who had been ready to condemn him found themselves leaning forward, fascinated and disturbed in equal measure. When he finished, silence filled the chamber. Finally, a representative from the Kelnar Collective stood. You're telling us that humans, a species we classified as primitive just 2 years ago, now control technology that surpasses our own? That they've built an empire we cannot reach or regulate? Yes, Kelth replied simply. Another representative, this one from the warrior species called the Drax, slammed a fist on his desk. Then we must act immediately. We cannot allow a rogue species to develop weapons that could threaten the entire galaxy. We should mobilize the fleet and force them to surrender this technology. Kelth had expected this response. With respect, Representative Karn, that's impossible. Humanity can retreat to dimensions where our ships cannot function. They can attack from universes we cannot reach. Any military action against them would be suicide for our forces. Then what do you suggest? Vorath asked, his ancient voice heavy with concern. That we simply accept this situation? That we allow humans to exist outside council authority? Yes, Kelth said firmly. Because we have no other choice. And because it's the right thing to do. The chamber erupted in argument. Some representatives agreed with Kelth. Others demanded action regardless of the cost. The debate raged for hours with no clear consensus emerging. Finally, Vorath called for order again. Enough. Ambassador Kelth, you will remain here while the council deliberates. This session is adjourned. The next 3 days were the longest of Kelth's life. He remained in his quarters, waiting while the council argued behind closed doors. His team stayed with him, offering support and sharing their own thoughts about what they had witnessed. Do you think they'll accept Morrison's offer? Ven asked on the second evening. Kelth stared out the window at the council homeworld below. I don't know. The council has operated the same way for thousands of years. Change doesn't come easily to institutions that old. Keller was reviewing the data they had collected. I've been studying humanity's expansion patterns. At their current rate of growth, they'll have colonies in 10,000 dimensions within a century. They'll become the largest civilization in existence, spread across more space than the entire council combined. Does that frighten you? Kelth asked. A little, Kella admitted. But it also excites me. Humanity is proving that there are new frontiers we never imagined, new ways of existing we never considered. Maybe the galaxy needs that kind of innovation. On the 4th day, Vorath summoned Kelth back to the council chamber. The old arbiter looked exhausted, as if the past days had aged him centuries. Ambassador Kelth, the council has reached a decision. It was not unanimous, and many representatives remain deeply concerned about the precedent we're setting. But we have concluded that you were correct in your assessment. Kelth felt his hearts begin to beat faster. Vorath continued. The council cannot control humanity. We cannot bring them back under our authority. We cannot regulate their expansion or supervise their development. They have moved beyond our reach, and any attempt to force them back would result in catastrophic conflict. The arbiter paused, and something like sadness crossed his ancient face. Therefore, the council will accept humanity's terms. We will recognize them as an independent, sovereign civilization. We will establish formal diplomatic relations on the basis of equality, not supervision, and we will make no attempt to interfere with their expansion into dimensional space. Relief flooded through Kelth, but Vorath wasn't finished. However, there are conditions. Humanity must agree not to interfere with council space or member species. They must share their dimensional technology so that we can defend ourselves if necessary, and they must establish clear boundaries for their expansion, so we know which dimensions they claim. I believe humanity will accept those terms. Kelth said carefully. They never wanted conflict with the council. They just wanted freedom. Then you will be our ambassador to humanity, Vorath announced. You will deliver our acceptance of their terms and negotiate the formal treaty. If you succeed, this will be remembered as the moment the council learned to treat other species as partners, rather than subjects. The arbiter's expression became stern. And if you fail, if humanity proves to be hostile or unwilling to compromise, then we will be forced to consider more drastic measures. I pray to the ancient stars that it doesn't come to that. Kelth bowed deeply. I will not fail, High Arbiter. Humanity wants peace as much as we do. 2 weeks later, Kelth returned to Meeting Point Alpha, the diplomatic station in the geometric universe. This time he wasn't alone. A full council delegation accompanied him, including representatives from the 5 founding species and a dozen others. The station had changed since his last visit. It was larger now, with new sections built to accommodate different species. Human flags flew alongside banners from a dozen other civilizations that Kelth didn't recognize. When he inquired, he learned that humanity had already made contact with 3 other species in distant dimensions and had established trading relationships with them. Jake Morrison was waiting in the station's main conference room. The old admiral stood as Kelth entered, and this time he extended his hand in the human gesture of greeting. "Ambassador Kelth, welcome back. I see you brought company." Kelth shook Morrison's hand warmly. "Admiral, may I introduce the council delegation? We've come to accept your terms and negotiate a formal treaty." Morrison's eyes widened slightly. "That's faster than we expected. The council must have been impressed by what you showed them." "Impressed and frightened," Kelth admitted, "but mostly convinced that cooperation is better than conflict." The negotiations took 2 weeks. Both sides brought their best diplomats, and the discussions were detailed and complex. Humanity agreed to respect council space and established clear boundaries for their dimensional expansion. They shared basic dimensional technology, though they kept the most advanced applications secret for now. In return, the council recognized human sovereignty and agreed to establish embassies in 5 human dimensions. The treaty was signed by Morrison and Vorith in a ceremony broadcast across both civilizations. It was a historic moment, the first time the Galactic Council had recognized another civilization as a true equal. After the signing, Morrison invited Kelth to a private meeting. They stood together on the observation deck, watching ships from a dozen different civilizations come and go. "You did something remarkable, Ambassador," Morrison said quietly. "You convinced one of the oldest institutions in the galaxy to change its fundamental approach to first contact." "That couldn't have been easy." "It wasn't," Kelth admitted. "Many council members still believe we're making a mistake. They think humanity will become a threat." "Will we?" Morrison asked with a slight smile. Kelth considered the question carefully. "I don't think so. I think humanity will keep exploring, keep expanding, keep pushing boundaries. You'll make mistakes. You'll face challenges. But I don't believe you'll become the monster some council members fear." Morrison nodded. "We'll try not to. But I won't lie to you, Ambassador. We're growing fast. In 10 years, we'll be the largest civilization in known space. In 100 years, we might be the largest civilization in the multiverse. That kind of power could corrupt us if we're not careful." "Then don't be alone in your growth," Kelth suggested. "Keep talking to the council. Keep engaging with other species. Let us learn from you, and you learn from us. Power only corrupts in isolation," the Admiral smiled. "That's wise advice. And it's why I have a proposal for you. How would you like to be the first non-human to visit one of our core worlds? Not a new colony or a frontier outpost, but one of our major settlements?" Kelth's heart skipped a beat. "I would be honored." Morrison led him to a transport ship and programmed coordinates for a dimension labeled simply as Home 2. The portal opened, and they flew through into a universe that looked surprisingly normal, but orbiting a planet that could have been Earth's sister. Kelth's message to the Galactic Council created chaos. For the first time in centuries, the great assembly hall on the council homeworld was filled with shouting voices and angry debates. Some representatives demanded immediate action to bring humanity back under galactic law. Others argued that a species capable of dimensional travel was too dangerous to antagonize. But Kelth was no longer on the council homeworld to participate in the debates. Against direct orders to return, he had taken his expedition deeper into the multiverse, following the trail humanity had left behind. "This is career suicide," Ven warned him as they programmed coordinates for their 5th dimensional jump. "The council has ordered us back 3 times now. If you keep ignoring them, they'll remove you from command." Kelth checked his equipment calmly. "Then they'll remove me. But first I need to understand what humanity has become. I need to see with my own eyes what they've built." The portal opened and they flew through into a universe that took Kelth's breath away. The galaxy on the other side was pristine and untouched. Billions of stars sparkled like jewels against the darkness, and orbiting the 4th planet from a yellow sun similar to Sol, they found a city. It hung in space like a ring around the world below, massive and beautiful. Thousands of structures connected by transport tubes and docking ports. Ships moved between the ring and the planet's surface in a constant flow of traffic. Lights glowed in windows. Gardens grew in transparent domes. This wasn't a colony struggling to survive. This was a thriving civilization. "How long did Morrison say they'd been here?" Kella whispered in awe. Ven checked his records. According to the star charts at Meeting Point Alpha, humanity claimed this universe 18 months ago. "They've built all of this in 18 months. A communication signal reached their ship. A woman's voice speaking in English. "Unknown vessel, this is New Seattle Traffic Control. Please identify yourself and state your intentions." Kelth activated his translator and responded. "This is Ambassador Kelth of the Galactic Council. We come in peace, seeking to speak with human authorities." There was a long pause. Then the voice returned, sounding amused. "Well, that's a surprise. We've been expecting you, but not quite this soon. Stand by for escort." 3 human ships approached, sleek vessels that moved with surprising grace. They guided Kelth's ship toward one of the docking ports on the massive ring structure. As they approached, Kelth could see people through the windows. Real, living humans going about their daily lives. The docking process was smooth and professional. When Kelth and his team emerged from their ship, they found a welcoming committee waiting. A woman in a formal blue uniform stepped forward, extending her hand in the human gesture of greeting. "Ambassador Kelth, I'm Mayor Linda Hayes of New Seattle. Welcome to what we're calling Dimension 17. We've prepared quarters for you and your team. I imagine you have many questions." Kelth shook her hand carefully, mindful of human fragility. "Mayor Hayes, thank you for receiving us. I confess I'm amazed by what you've built here." Linda smiled. "Would you like a tour? I think seeing is better than explaining." She led them through the station, and Kelth's amazement grew with every step. The corridors were clean and well-maintained. The humans they passed looked healthy and happy. Children played in a park under an artificial sky that somehow felt real. Shops and restaurants lined the streets. This wasn't a frontier outpost. This was a home. "We have 30,000 people living on the station," Linda explained as they walked. "Another 100,000 on the planet below. We're expecting 2 more colony ships next month. By next year, we'll have 500,000 people in this system." "How?" Van asked, unable to contain himself. "How have you grown so quickly?" Linda led them to an observation deck that overlooked the planet. "Because we're not just one colony anymore, Doctor. We're hundreds. Across dozens of dimensions, humanity is establishing new settlements every month. Each colony shares resources and knowledge with the others. We have supply chains that span multiple universes. A factory in Dimension 8 produces ship components that get transported to assembly yards in Dimension 12. Farms in Dimension 23 feed colonies across 6 different realities." She gestured at the view. "And this universe, Dimension 17, is one of our primary hubs. We're building a major waypoint station here that will connect to 30 other dimensions. We're becoming a network, Ambassador, a web of humanity spread across the multiverse." Kelth felt his legs grow weak again. He had thought humanity was running and hiding. Instead, they were building an empire across infinite worlds. "Why show us this?" he asked. "Why reveal your capabilities?" Linda turned to face him. "Because hiding doesn't help anyone. We want the Council to understand what we've become. We're not the primitive species you were coming to supervise. We're not children who need guidance. We're a multiversal civilization now, and we're only getting stronger." Over the next week, Linda showed them everything. They visited factories where humans manufactured incredible technology. They saw farms that used dimensional gates to ship fresh food across realities in seconds. They met scientists who were learning to navigate dimensions the way ancient sailors had learned to navigate oceans. In a research laboratory, they met a young scientist named Aaron Foster who was studying dimensional physics. He showed them his work with obvious pride. "We've mapped 17,000 different universes so far," Aaron explained, displaying complex charts that made Ven's eyes widen. "Each one has slightly different physical laws. In some, the speed of light is faster. In others, gravity works differently. We're learning to predict which universes will be safe for humans and which won't." "How do you travel between them so easily?" Van asked, fascinated despite himself. Aaron pulled up another display. "We've miniaturized the waypoint technology. The gates don't need to be massive anymore. We can build portable units small enough to fit on a ship. Every colony vessel carries its own dimensional drive now. We can open a portal anywhere, anytime." The implications were staggering. Humanity hadn't just escaped the Council. They had become impossible to contain. With portable dimensional drives, they could flee to new universes faster than anyone could follow. They could hide in dimensions where Council ships couldn't survive. They could wage war from universes the Council couldn't even reach. "You're afraid of us," Linda said quietly one evening as she and Kelth stood on the observation deck, watching ships come and go. "I can see it in your eyes. You came here expecting to find refugees. Instead, you found something that might be more powerful than the Council itself." Kelth couldn't deny it. Should I be afraid? No, Linda said firmly. We don't want to conquer the council or challenge your authority in your own space. We just want to be left alone to grow in ours. But we needed you to understand that forcing us back isn't an option anymore. We're too spread out, too mobile, too well established. She pulled up a holographic display that showed a map of dimensions. Hundreds of glowing points marked human colonies. This is just the beginning, Ambassador. In 10 years, we'll have settlements in 1,000 universes. In 50 years, 10,000. We're going to keep expanding until we've explored every dimension we can reach. That's what humanity does. We grow, we explore, we push boundaries. And if the council tries to stop you? Kelth asked. Linda's expression became serious. Then we'll fight. Not because we want to, but because we'll have no choice. We've built dimensional weapons, Ambassador. Devices that could destabilize entire universes if we needed to use them. We don't want to use them. The thought horrifies us, but we will if we're threatened. The conversation was interrupted by an urgent message. Plek's voice came over Kelth's communicator. Ambassador, we're receiving a transmission from the council. They're demanding your immediate return to face charges of insubordination. They're sending a fleet to bring you back. Kelth closed his eyes briefly. He had known this was coming. How long until they arrive? 3 weeks, sir. Linda put a hand on his arm. You don't have to go back, Ambassador. We can offer you sanctuary. We have more than enough room for you and your entire team. The offer was tempting. Kelth had seen wonders here that the council couldn't imagine. He had learned more about the multiverse in 2 months than the council had learned in centuries. But he shook his head. No, I need to go back. I need to explain to the council what I've seen. They need to understand that the old way of doing things won't work with humanity. If I run, they'll never listen. Linda nodded slowly. I understand. But before you go, there's one more thing you need to see. She took him to a sealed section of the station, guarded by human soldiers. Inside was a small amphitheater with a large viewing screen. Linda activated the screen and Jake Morrison appeared. But this wasn't a recording. This was a live transmission. Morrison looked even older than he had in the message at Meeting Point Alpha. His hair was completely white now, his face deeply lined. But his eyes were still sharp and clear. Ambassador Kelth, Morrison said with a slight smile. I've been watching your journey through our colonies. I'm impressed you had the courage to come this far. Admiral Morrison, Kelth replied, bowing his head respectfully. I needed to understand what humanity has become. And do you understand now?